Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome to Not Your Average Tabletop. I'm Zach.
And I'm Pepper.
And today we're going to do a chippy review on My Island. And we'll try to avoid any spoilers since it is a legacy style game. But they may accidentally slip through, so know that going in. If you want to for sure make sure you're not getting anything, then I would suggest just skipping this video and going on to something else. Maybe our unnamed unmatched tournament, because we have about 30 some videos for that, that'll take you some time. Then you can go to our Dinomania, Stone Timber, and then our top 60 games of all time. So might as well subscribe if you want to see any of that content or any future content. But otherwise, we're going to do a chippy rating. And for anyone that's never watched one of our reviews before, chippy reviews, we just, each letter in the word chippy counts for something. So we'll kind of go through that. Then I don't know. We'll see. We might just do more spoiler talk at the end. So if you did want to know spoilers, I guess, you can wait till the end. And then we'll maybe talk about that then. Make it chippies.
Chippies. But just still chippy. Silent S.
Yes. But then the core mechanisms of the game. So that's the first, the only C in Chippy.
The only C.
And I'm coming in with this at a 7. And I would say, trying to spoil too much, I would say at the I think this.
There's multiple sets of mechanics.
Yes.
Throughout the.
Yes,
and so we did play the whole thing.
We played through the whole 24 games essentially. Yeah. Of this one, so that is a lot of games, and since it is a legacy game, there are things changing. And I would say for me, the core mechanism of the game felt like it was getting. I thought it got, I don't know, felt worse as the game went on, but still at a 7 because I think overall a lot of it was pretty solid, kind of just from the start. Or if you've ever played My City, it's kind of a bingo style tile placement game where you could maybe even say roll and write. We had debate whether or not that is bingo or not.
Flip and place.
Game where everyone has the same tiles essentially, and then you're placing them onto a board and trying to fill out areas. It's kind of how the game starts, and then there's different things that happen throughout the game that change and bring new ways to score and new ways to get other things as well. But I would say overall it was still solid. It just there were some things that I would say I did not enjoy as much later on.
Yeah, I think that it makes sense. Like in the first few chapters, the things they add are all familiar, because you kind of start out very, very basic, and then you add decent things that are pretty intuitive. It's not a huge spoiler, but like kind of creating groups on your island, that kind of thing, and they just add more and more kind of basic things that just make it better and better and higher scoring games. And then I guess I'm kind of thinking of that as also part of the product, because at a certain point in there is pretty much the rule set for the Eternal game, which you can play post-campaign on the flip side of the board that is not custom. You can then play forever, just with a rule set that doesn't change. And so I'm kind of factoring that in here as kind of the core kind of set. But for the legacy aspect, at a certain point, it does do things that shifted quite a bit, where it's like, oh, that is like completely different, where it was like, oh, more of that. Oh, now we're doing something with that. Now it's like, oh, now it's like this. And that is totally different. And it felt harder. Maybe just, it takes a while to get used to, I guess. So I have it an 8.75.
Oh, wow.
Which actually is pretty close to a 9. I don't know if I feel like a 9 for it, but
I think that is. For me, but
I think the core set, because like I said, I am. Because there may have been highs and lows, I think as low as it can possibly get is the Eternal game rule set, because you will always have that. And I really love the kind of flip and place mechanism. It's so simple and so approachable, and trying to puzzle out with kind of polyomino type shapes to fill out your island. I just find that really satisfying. I mean, it kind of is just a very basic core set of rules, but they just work together. It's very solid and very quick game as well.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess then, did you have anything else with that, or?
Now we can move on.
Okay. So we'll go to H history,
Yeah.
and we both had 10 for that. And yeah, if you haven't watched one of these before, these are all kind of weighted. History is kind of 10% of the total final score. So the most that one can be is 10 games. That's why it's a 10. But that's just the number of plays that we had of it. And then we get into investment, which kind of look at kind of in a few different ways. Maybe does it feel like you're getting a different experience kind of each time you play it? Does the length of time feel about right, or does it feel like it's overstaying its welcome? And kind of any of those types of feels. And yeah, for investment, I'm coming in at a 7, and this one, I would say this had the exact same thing that happened to it for me as core mechanism. I think it started higher, and it just kind of kept going down with more games of it, because I felt like, so it says 30 minutes on the box for playtime, and I feel like that was
a lot longer.
That
Easily
that was
doubled
right.
in the
Yeah.
last few chapters.
Yes, I would say it felt right the first however many games we played of it, and it was snappy, and I'm like, I want to go to the next game, and yeah, by the last few sets of 3 games, I was like, oh boy, this is... Some of them felt like they were going on longer than I would have liked.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a 7, but yeah, earlier on it probably was higher, maybe at an 8, 8.5. I felt like it was flowing good speed and everything, and then it just kind of became more of a slog, and I'm just like, it's kind of hurting the experience a little bit, because it just felt like it was, I don't know. And then, yeah, at certain points with some of the new rules, you kind of had a feeling of how the game was going to turn out partway through, and then it felt like it kept going after that, after kind of knowing how things were shaping out. So it's still 7, because, the first half felt amazing. And like I said, that has been really high for me. But then the second half kind of just averages it back down to about a 7 for me.
Yeah, I have it. I think we're approaching it just slightly differently. I have 8.75. Again.
Oh, wow.
Really? Again, almost a 9. Wow. I didn't think I gave him this high of rankings. But, yeah, I think that the time investment...
Yeah. I guess if you're just looking at the Eternal mode...
The Eternal game, time
probably
investment
higher.
is really good, because you can play it. I assume, based on kind of at what point that is in the overall kind of 24 games we played, I think that would be a pretty quick game. So the time investment is good. I don't know if it's going to be like overly different from game to game, but you are also investing in an experience of that campaign. So you get the quickness in your Eternal game investment, but then you also have a whole nother experience that you can have. And I think that even if that has its low points, that it still, as a separate thing, adds to the investment, I think.
Well, that's fair. Thinking about it slightly differently, I guess. I was thinking of
as a product. I think the investment is good.
Yeah, it's just tough for me, because for me, I feel like the intention was a legacy game, and you know how I feel about legacy games, and some of them we have played have not Eternal mode, but whatever they call their mode post play. That if they have that, some don't, and then some do. So like Clank Legacy comes to mind, or Charterstone, and it just, to me, is not the same. It's still, I think Clank Legacy is still a solid game. If you like Clank, I think you still get that. And yeah, I think after the fact, this would probably be about the point in the game that I still was having a really good time at it. So then it probably would be higher if I was just rating it on that. But I think I was viewing it more as the whole legacy experience. Because that's how, when I got this for Abby, I guess that's how I was expecting it to be. I wasn't expecting, I'm looking forward to playing this post-campaign however many times. But you could. Then Presentation. What do you got here?
Presentation. I'm just looking at all these and then looking at the final number. I'm like, I don't know if any of this adds up. So who knows if I entered it in wrong, but presentation originally had 7.5 and I bumped it down to 7.25. I really like the artwork in it, and in the campaign you're adding stickers throughout the game. That's not a spoiler, and I think for the first half of the game the stickers were really nice, and in the second half the stickers are not as nice, and they can break up artwork and not look as good, and then some of the things that you are having to mark with markers not looking the best, especially if you're me and not really great at little details. And so I'm like, when I look at my board in its later state, I'm like, it doesn't look very good, where it looked really nice for most of the game. And I think that it's kind of a similar thing to you, that it kind of dropped it a little bit at this point, just because that's what my most recent experience with it is. But everything's solid. The cards are solid. The tokens tiles are solid. Artwork's good. But I feel like some stickers later on, I guess, yeah, I can't talk about that. That's spoilery, but
Yeah. I'm actually giving this one an 8 for presentation.
Okay.
I think it stays pretty solid throughout, and in terms of stickering, if you've played other Legacy games before, I would say a lot of them sticker things, and I think this one does a pretty good job at it. I know there have been other games that we have that have not, like, just the stickers themselves were not set up to probably work as well as it should have been. Knowing what was going to have to be stickered, and I feel like there wasn't that problem as much in this game. There might be a couple cases of potential problematic things.
We can talk about it in the spoiler. But
we'll talk about that later. But it didn't hurt the experience for me, and I think the rest, all the tiles went on there really nicely. I think those all felt good.
That's true.
And stuff,
It's
and,
probably like an 8. It probably was like an 8.5
all the
or
components
something,
were,
or maybe even higher earlier. But I don't know. Just
That's
I'll talk about
fair.
it later. I'll talk about
That's
it
fair.
later
That's
about my thoughts.
Yeah. And then I've got a preference on here. I would say overall, I kept wanting to come back to this one, even when towards the end it was getting a little bit maybe more wacky, and started extending the game length. Coming in at a 7.5 for our second P here of preference. So I still wanted to get it off the shelf more than the average game. Still wanted to get back to it and finish up the campaign, and I was excited to do that even when it started.
If you didn't have to finish the campaign, though, then would it have gotten out as much? I mean, obviously not as much, but I mean, that adds a lot more, just like what you have to do.
I think still, though. So if this was,
But I guess
if this
compared
was
to
just
other...
the legacy mode or the post-campaign mode, I don't know exactly what was in there at that point or not, but I would say that would still probably fall in this category. It'd be one that I would want to take out probably more often than some other ones, just because I tend to like that bingo style game, flip and place game. I do tend to like those quite a bit. They're usually on the quicker side of things, just like filling and polyomino things in general. So this one's still, either way, whether it would have been that. Obviously, probably would not have gotten out 24 times in the matter that we did it, but I think it still would be one that I'd want to go back to, just because of the simplicity of the setup and teardown and all those things.
Yeah. I have it preference of 8. That one, I think that would be a little higher. I don't believe any of these numbers that I put down here.
You just put them together in like 5 minutes.
I did. Now I've changed my mind completely. But yeah, I think, like you said, it is an easy one to get to the table, and I mean, it might be too simple for some, but I don't mind that, and it may not be the most replayable apart from that initial campaign, but I don't mind replayability. That's why my investment numbers are probably always going to be a bit higher than yours because that doesn't bother me. I've played Yahtzee 500 times on Board Game Arena and I still haven't gotten tired of it. So I don't see myself getting tired of this one. I think I'd always be up for it. It's not an offensive game. It's not ever going to be like, not this one, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that 100%. And then It Factor, I'm putting it at 5 because it was with the fact that it's a legacy game. It was enjoyable to go back to. We played it at the 4-player count, the max player count. I think we all had a pretty good experience. It gave us reason to kind of get together and play some extra games and stuff. So I think overall it was a pretty solid experience. Gave it a 5.
Yeah, It Factor. I never know what to do with It Factor. I gave it a 9, and I think that any legacy game is going to have an It Factor for me.
No.
Any legacy or campaign of any type that just adds something to a game to where it's hard to define It Factor for me sometime. Because a lot of games can kind of feel similar, and I'm like, what really does this have anything that stands out? And having a legacy version does stand out quite a bit, being able to change it and customize it. So I think the It Factor would be pretty high for this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and based on kind of the calculations and percentages and stuff, that gives me a total of a 7.15 for this one, which probably seems about right. It was a solid experience, but I would also say that it probably wasn't like Clank Legacy. I have in my head several times debated whether or not to go back through it. I don't know that I would do this one. I might do My City, but I don't know that I would do this one again necessarily. At least not for a while. Maybe if I had another group of different people that wanted to play it, were interested in it, I'd be willing to do it. I think so.
Yeah, this gives me a number of 8, which I'm like, does that add up? Because I have 8.75, 10, 8.75, 7.25, 8, 9. That's just an 8. That doesn't seem right. I may have to re-enter the numbers, but final thing of 8, and I think it probably should be a little higher. It feels a little low, but just a really approachable, really solid, pretty simple, easy to learn game with a unique experience if you do want to go through the legacy version, but even without that, or if you don't really end up enjoying that, well, if you don't enjoy that at all, you're probably not going to like the base game.
Right.
But yeah, if it does kind of fall apart for you in the second half, like it may for some, then you do still have that kind of first half to fall back on.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, if you don't want to hear any spoilers, I think that's all we've got for this one. Definitely, if you like the content, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see other content. Can't remember if we did any unboxing for this one. I don't know if we did. Probably wasn't too much to show, but if we did, we'll have a video on that if you want to check that out. Otherwise, check out our other content. And then, otherwise, stick around. I guess you might have already left, but stick around for spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers are coming up as soon as my hat is turned around. Not so average tabletop after dark.
Now we can talk about the spoilers.
Let's talk about just how much this fell apart in the campaign for you.
Yes. So this one started off pretty solid. It was probably in my consideration for favorite games this year.
I think it was in your hotness, like on your tag on Instagram for a while. So I was like, wow, I think this one was.
It might
for
have
a
been.
while.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Wow, he's really enjoying it.
Yeah, I was having an amazing time with it, and that might have partially been because I was doing pretty well.
You were.
And by the end of it, out of all the 24 games, right, 24?
Yep.
I think I did have the most wins. So I think I won 10 games, and then I think you and Abby won 6, and Michaela won 5. There might have been ties in some of them. I think that's, when I looked at my app last, I think that's what it was.
And you and Michaela ended up tying
for the win.
It ended up being pretty close.
It did.
Within just a few points, and then I think I was third, and then Abby, I think we were really close.
Yeah. So it was solid. things that were being added were probably pretty minimal. I don't know that it was changing like
Because yeah,
that significantly from every set of 3
Yeah.
games.
yeah,
It's pretty small tweaks to
yeah.
the
It
game.
starts out you just want to cover up all your beach spaces, and you get a point for a red spot on a beach space. And then they just kind of start adding like, oh, now you score if you get a group of blue tiles, and then a group of red tiles, and a group of
Which is
yellow
fun.
tiles, which you can see coming. It's just like, okay, each of these are going to end up scoring for a group of 5 or whatever, going to get you 3 points, and those are all good. And then they added some paths, which are a straight line of paths. I think
Yep.
it started out as, and then those would be points. And then I think it was a group of paths that did not have to be straight.
Something like that, yeah.
And then eventually you wanted to connect things to other things with the paths, which I think that still works. I think that's
Yeah.
all good. And then they started doing more things.
It started getting a little stranger.
Stranger things they are doing.
Started adding
Eventually,
some stickers to the board. Depending on when you completed, because then there were certain things, I don't remember what you had to do for each individual one, but
they
sometimes
added
if you...
like pirates
Yeah,
to the
added
board. They had to
pirates and-
surround with the blue tiles, the walls, which then you would cover up the pirates with another beach space. But then they could then respawn, and
You could
me and
have
Abby
stacks of
each
stickers.
had a spot that got a pirate, got them removed, got a pirate, got them removed, got a pirate, got them removed. So there were like 6 stickers on there. I mean, you don't have to. You can just leave the pirate on there.
You
But
could-
I
wait.
like to go through the motions.
Yeah.
And then it's just a massive stack of stickers, which,
Then they come
Also-
into play later
yes,
for another sticker that
Uh,
ends up covering.
a 3-piece sticker that goes on 2 spots and that spot. So
Yes.
I'm like, well, now one of those spots is raised up. So that was not problematic. It works.
Mhm.
We pushed it to its limit, certainly, but
Right.
it still worked. But yeah, like even that surrounding the pirates, I don't think that was bad. I think that worked.
Yeah.
Um,
But then it started. So initially, it was kind of if you won, you'd get 2
Yep.
kind of points towards really what you were trying to do over the entirety of the
just
game.
the campaign points.
Yeah,
pretty
campaign
much.
points. You'd get 2 if you won, 1 if you got second, I think.
Yep, and then
the other one's
you
got some bonus.
stickers to put on their tiles. To
Usually
help
making
them
things better,
forward.
which is fine and good, and that's what I was really, I guess, liking. And I didn't really mind so much adding like different ways to get additional ones, but then it would be like certain things like the pirates and stuff you could complete, and it didn't really necessarily matter that much. And then I don't remember which one it was, but then if you completed that specific thing, it gave you 2 of those points as a bonus, which I don't think we either didn't know ahead of time or for some reason.
Oh.
So then it's like, well, I would have done that differently if I'd have known I was getting extra points for that, because those other points are much more important than doing that. I think it was the teeth and the...
No,
There was a sticker where you had to fill out teeth for these things, and then if you completed them in the first game, you got 2 points, and I think after that it was like 1 point or something. Which, I mean, you're still getting something, but at the same time, it's like, well, I think I intentionally split teeth up
Oh, yeah.
to kind of make it even. But then it's like, well, I would have rather gotten an extra point probably, because I think I still
yeah.
could have probably gotten
Could
that
have done it. Yep.
the next time. So it's kind of like, why are we randomly throwing these points? But then later on, I would say it was even crazier.
It did get even crazier. So they introduced a lot more ways to get those points in game as well. Introduced ways to lose those points, like if you do not by the end of a chapter pretty much deal with whatever the theme was for
And
that
you're
chapter,
crossing off
you'd
points,
usually
which is
cross
weird.
off points, progress points, so on the campaign.
Which I don't love the idea of crossing them off. It feels very negative, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it works, but it just feels like such a negative thing.
'Cause
Like,
you're
oh, I
already
earned that point, and now it's like,
not.
well, actually, I lost that point now.
Yeah,
Which
because you're already
at
not.
a point in the game, Abby had like 2, and then she had to take a -1. It's like, and that was probably like 9 games in or something, and I feel like that would feel really bad.
Yeah.
But Yeah. And then later on, there were more ways to lose them,
Yeah,
potentially.
And then
Yeah.
yeah,
It got to the
because
point
you're
in the
already
game.
not getting the bonus points for getting them finished right away,
Right.
and then you lose them. That just seems maybe a little too punishing. Plus, then you kind of have to make maybe a little mess of your board, trying to cross out something you already filled in.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, yeah, not a biggest fan
Not
of
my
that. It
favorite.
wasn't that bad though initially.
Right. And then, yeah, part of the game, you can get up to a maximum of 55 points. I think we had like one game where
One
that
game.
happened, where people got there.
So yeah, if you get
And then,
there, then you get like a bonus.
Yeah.
Like if you get like a great score, you're getting a bonus legacy point.
yep,
And it seemed like right kind of when we were starting to be like, oh, we're around that area. Then they like removed all the ways you
Pretty
can
much all
score
points.
points. They're like those groups, you don't score them anymore.
no.
Or it might have been like just like step by step.
Yeah.
Remove them. I forget exactly how it went, but it was like, oh, so
Yeah.
and then it's like no more points for the beach spaces, the houses there, but now you get the houses around the center area in the board, and it's like, okay, but they're going to add more ways, which they eventually did, but very, very slowly
Yeah.
added ways to get points just from the tile placement itself,
Yeah.
and it more concerned another board that you had to deal with, which had tokens on it, and you creating groups, larger groups, 8 instead of 5 in a group,
Mhm.
let you place some of your tokens onto a board that could then
Either give you points,
progress points on the legacy points, or points in game,
and then
or
some bonuses. And
bonuses
there's two
for
types
certain
of bonuses.
tracks that you are doing
Yeah.
in those last few envelopes.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, now in game,
It gets to the
much
point.
less scoring.
Yes. So you get to a point where you know I am not winning this game because there's no way for me to get more points.
Yeah.
And someone else is so far ahead that I can't catch them. So you know kind of who's winning that game, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And it's like, well,
And there's really, yeah, if you know 2 people are ahead of you, you're like, there's not really
Yeah.
anything I can do. It doesn't it doesn't hurt me to just quit now or whatever.
yeah.
I did not love the changes in the second half of the game. They felt too random and wacky for me. I don't know, because I was ahead by quite a bit.
Yeah, and like you
I
said,
would say,
Abby had not done well the first like 9 games.
And I was she was at like 1 point, and I was probably close to 10. Maybe not
Yeah.
that many, but I had quite a few on her. Like,
Yeah, quite a few. But then it just really evened up very quickly,
yeah,
which I think that was
It's-
good. That was good in our particular play. But
Yeah.
if it had gone the other way and you had just extended even more, then that would have felt just like, well, what the heck just happened?
that's true.
It did end up going pretty perfectly, actually. Just
Yeah.
kind of getting everyone just neck and neck.
Right.
Where I think kind of in the final game anyone could have taken it.
Yeah.
But it could have gone a different way and could have just really... I mean, you did really feel it because you were the one that was leading.
Mhm.
But the rest of us is like, okay, we made progress. Because I think Abby had kind of a few episode stretch where she made a huge leap. And then I had
Mhm.
one where I just had a great...
Yeah, because there would be some kind of bonus ones you can
Yeah.
get and stuff for a lot of extra legacy points.
Yeah.
And that really caught everyone back up. And then at the end, there's these 4 tracks that you're trying to fill up. And if you don't, you have to pay progress points on those values. And
Which started
that could pretty much, I
started at
when
like
I-
60 something.
Yes.
We had ended up getting like, what, 40 to 50
Yeah.
total that we had earned. And we did end up getting pretty close
most
to the
of
end
us
of those
got
tracks.
pretty
all
close.
of
But
us.
yeah, I was concerned when they said that, when we read that. Because I'm like, if I don't fill these in, like, that was my focus the last 3 games, because I knew, because a lot of mine were in the 20s and 30s at that
Yeah.
point. And that's not actually that many, but it was at least 10 spots on each of the
Yeah.
tracks. So it's like 40 spots that I had to fill in. So
great.
that was the only thing I focused on in the
Yeah.
last 3 games because I'm like, this is much more meaningful than winning
Yeah.
the games. Because if I don't fill this in, I lose 20 legacy points that I've been gaining this whole game.
Yeah, and
I'm like, how did they figure these numbers out? I don't know.
The tracks start out at such a high number, and I had just ignored my purple because previously, if you won, if you were leading, I think you got 1 progress point.
Hmm.
So I decided to lead in the blue and yellow tracks to get a progress point in each of those, and ignoring my purple, which left it only like 3 spaces, which would be like in the 50s of progress points that I would have to pay at the end of the game.
Hmm.
So then I knew, like, oh, I'm gonna have to bump that purple
The whole time.
the whole time, and I don't know how I did. It didn't feel like we're gaining that much, but everyone did.
Yeah,
get to
I
the
think
end
you
of the
won
track.
Did you
I
win
did
2
win-
games?
I won 2 games, so I got
Which
4.
you got to do 4 at a
4
time.
wild
Which,
movements,
yeah.
so
Otherwise,
that
you
did
would
help.
if you wouldn't have won those, it would have been tough.
Yeah, that's
'Cause,
true.
yeah, you moved 20 spots on that at least,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, it's a good game. I don't know. I wish they'd went a different direction with it. I don't know. It just felt like they were throwing random stuff at
It
the wall,
did. It did
and
feel
I don't know.
random at a certain point. Just kind of like, and this, if you do this, you get a progress point. Like, I don't
Right.
know. I mean, it worked. It was fine.
I mean,
but
I
if they had
feel
treated
like-
it that way from the beginning, that like in this episode, the first to get 8 roads gets a progress point. Like if they had done that from the start, then it wouldn't feel so crazy. But
Right.
it did feel like they started just throwing them around like Oprah, while also taking away any chance to get in-game points
Right.
as well.
Yeah, because then it felt like you weren't even playing the game. Sometimes it was playing kind of a different version that they were trying
Yeah.
to get you to play just to stay on the track. Because I would assume you're trying to get some of those so you've got 6 games to get on those ones that would lose you points. Go on those tracks. I mean, like, there's a potential world where you didn't do much. I guess you would have lost 4 points then potentially if you didn't focus on it much at all. But
Yeah.
there's a potential world where you could have won 15 of these games, and if you did horribly on these tracks, you'd lose it. And I
Yeah.
just don't know. That just feels really not right. But
Yeah, that doesn't feel right. Especially to not know what it's going to do in the first chapter that it's introduced. So
Yeah.
half of your time that you can work on it, you don't know the impact that it's going to have.
right.
So I think if they had said that, then I think there would be enough time to really
Yeah.
do that. And even when we didn't know and we did get into kind of rough situations,
Yeah.
we were able to do it.
Yeah.
But we did do pretty well.
Yeah,
on
we
those.
ended up being able to get it. So maybe that's how it would turn out every time. I am just worried or concerned of
There is a
potential
time when,
future that, I don't know if you really didn't do much the first 3 games. If you only had 3 games left to do it, that is going to be tough.
Yeah,
If
for
you
sure.
really were not doing much on them, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and yeah, kind of last thing I said I'd talk about it, the stickers that really upset me. I guess I may put a picture in here. It's the 3 stickers that I said that kind of covered those pirates that were a huge stack. Whose thing is this? This is Abby's board, and those stickers, everything else kind of blends with it. It's got the same background as the spots that are on there,
Mhm.
except the meteorites or whatever that were added near the end, which I guess that's kind of what they had to do. But like the lighthouses, the harbors, they all match the artwork pretty well. Even the tracks, even though you're covering them up with a bunch of marker, it doesn't match the water.
Mhm.
But the construction sites are just look, I think, terrible on the board. Completely breaks up the artwork. It's just a solid color background.
That's
Which,
fair.
I
Not
mean,
the
you-
best looking ones.
Have to, I guess, because you can place them in any spaces that you want, so you can't get it to match unless you restrict them to the specific spaces to where they can be.
That's true.
But I just really, before that, everything kind of matched, and it looked like a landscape, like the
Yeah, I was
Forever
fine with
board.
it, but
And now
I can
this
see
is
that.
what you're left with. There's nothing that covers it up, even when you complete it. And it just bothers me. I'm more into presentation and details than most, and that just bothers me. I'm like, it was so good for the first half. Like, when you put those harbors in there, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. It added these buildings and docks in here, and it matches the artwork that was already there. But then those construction sites, they just took the presentation down at least a whole point. Because it bugged me. Bugged me much more than any gameplay differences. Which it probably shouldn't.
Who knows? But yeah, otherwise, I think that's all of our spoiler talk.
Yeah.
So, if you're still here at this point, we appreciate you. But otherwise, we hope to see you on our other videos. And as always, don't forget to
Keep on nibbling.
on our content.